You're listening to another great podcast in the MyMac Podcasting Network.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the show where we take a wander around the week in Apple news, reviews, technology, associated products, and all sorts of other things that catch our eye. This is another episode of the Essential Apple Podcast. Hello, listeners, and welcome to another Essential Apple Podcast. Well, this week it all went a bit bonkers, didn't it? Jeff Bezos refused to be blackmailed by the National Enquirer. Apple fixed a bug and then got accused of another one. Apps have been secretly recording your iPhone screen. Apple has told them to stop doing that or else. Angela is leaving. Apple are working on their own modems, and rumours have surfaced of a revised model of the iPhone 7 and 8 because of the German sales ban won by Qualcomm. To talk about that and lots of other things, of course, is my friend, SMUG colleague and local businessman, Mark Elliss of Suffolk Macs. Hello, Mark.
Hello, Simon.
Welcome to our show. Thank you for coming on. I think before we start, I will just do the giveaways, I think, because we've had the draw for the giveaways. We had Ghostery on, who kindly gave us some swag bags to give away. And the names out of the hat are Andy Joyce, Bob Wood, Guy Serle of the MyMac Show, our very own John Nemerovski, the hardware store owner, James Mac Jim Ormiston, Ivor Pope, Elisa, you say Pacelli and I say Pacelli, and Mackyasse, Cutie Melon, and Blanchard. So, well done everybody. Swag bags will be on their way. One lucky listener, of course, was going to be gifted a Working Smarter for Mac Users course from Bob Levitas, and the winner of that was Dan Murphy. And the copy of the book goes to Wob Bud. So, there we go. Well done, you two. And if you entered and didn't win, commiserations. There we go. And, of course, I will just mention that Luminar and Aurora HD from Skylum, you can get an extra $10 off using the coupon code EssentialApple at the checkout. Well, now I've got that out of the way. Welcome to the show, Mark. Well, what we normally do, as I explained before the show, is we start off by, asking our guests a little bit about their history and what they do. And so I guess I should start off with explaining what you do. So, would you like to explain to the listeners what it is you do and how you ended up doing such a thing?
Thank you, Simon. What did I do? What do I do now? I maintain various Macs for various people. I look after small businesses, some schools, private individuals. What I tend to do is to repair the Macs, sometimes down to component level, but more often than not down to board level or disk drive level when the drives go. We also look into helping you with software issues. This is not a programming issue. This is just this app isn't working right with that, and find out what's causing it and try and sort it out. So that's my day job, and that's my company. That's what I do on a daily basis.
Very good. And I was going to say, and obviously your company is Suffolk Macs, and as you say, that's what you do, computer support for individuals and small businesses. How long have you been doing that then, Mark? Because I know it's quite a long time.
Been doing this since 2003.
So definitely quite a long time.
Yeah, quite a long time. Yes. It doesn't feel a long time, but not until you start to talk numbers.
No.
And then you think, oh my goodness.
Yes, well, it's a bit like the other week when we had the Mac Mommy on, and we were, reminiscing about the early Macs. We were talking about 35 years of Macintosh and 30 years since the SE30, and then we sort of oh my God, where did all that time go?
Yeah. It's where did all the time go, and look at what we've got now.
Yeah. So, obviously, you didn't start, I'm pretty sure, you don't start a Mac support business or a computer support business without, out of nothing. So, what led you, I suppose? What led you down that path, Mark?
Well, I'm going to go back a very long way. Just after I left school, I managed to get myself a job at Hughes TV and Audio. There's a plug for Hughes. Don't do anything for them these days.
But they are still going. Yes.
They certainly are. I joined them on a 5-year apprenticeship as an electronics repair engineer. And by the time I got to the 5th year of the apprenticeship, just completing that, and personal computers started to come out. And that's where my interest was going. The company's interest wasn't going that way. So I looked around a bit and found a job for another local company who I don't think exists anymore, called Melodata. They were based in East Bergholt. What they did was to do third-party peripheral maintenance. So again, it was electronics repairs, but this time it was for printers, terminals, all sorts of EDUs, and also some microcomputers. And some people out there may have heard of it. We used to deal with the Zentech from the British Library, which is a CPM-based system. So you can hear from that, my computer knowledge goes back a very, very long way.
Back into the dawn of time.
It feels like it sometimes.
Not quite ferrite core memory period.
Oh, not quite. Punch cards, yes, I've played around with punch cards.
Yeah, we had David Acklam on, obviously, a few shows back, who worked on the GPS system. He was talking about, early punch card systems and
yes.
Having problems because somebody put their greasy fingers on the cards after they'd had their Kentucky Fried Chicken, and it was reading ones where there should be no ones and such like. There we go.
Yes. The other classic problem with the cards was walking around with a stack of them, dropping them, and then having to put them back in order again. Why the computer got slightly confused.
Just a bit. Be very, very careful with this stack of cards, indeed.
Yeah, and it actually, now we can tie in my first exposure to Apple. And no, my first exposure was not a Mac. It was an Apple II.
I think that for a lot of people, that is their first Apple experience. I must admit, I didn't really get into the whole Apple scene until the Mac was a thing. About 1988, I think I started to get involved with Macs. But I know, lots of people, the Apple II was definitely their first computer.
It was certainly my first. It wasn't my machine. It was the company's machine. But one of my jobs was to upgrade it, maintain it, and do a little bit of basic programming on it. And it was just a little bit at the time. But that was my introduction into Apple. After that, I moved along to a company called Métier Management Systems, which unfortunately is another one that doesn't exist anymore. I was taken on there to maintain the mini computers, which they had designed in-house. And this is all based in Ipswich, so it's nice and local. Fun times, very interesting. It did enable me to get across the world, sorting things out. I had a few days at Cape Canaveral one year. But basically, the mini computers were for project management systems. Right. And there were a couple of systems out there. I was told one day, you've got a problem over there, it's your area. Here's your plane ticket, grab your passport, get going.
There you go.
But fun times. Moving on from Melodata, I then went on to, that was Métier. Moving on from Métier, I then went on to a small company called K's, again in Ipswich, and they produced an engine management test system, which was shown on Tomorrow's World years ago.
Well.
Unfortunately, I don't think that exists either, so I'm leaving quite a trail of destruction behind me.
Yeah, let's hope that's purely coincidental, Mark.
I hope it is. If not, this business of mine's going destructive soon. because it's way beyond the time it should have done that. But yes, that was engine management systems. Travelled across Europe installing those and got involved with companies like Chrysler. Moved on from there to a company called Planning Sciences, who we used to jokingly call Plumbing Services. The reason for that is the phone number we had was closely related with a plumbing services company, and we did get phone calls asking to sort the plumbing out. But that was when I came back into the Mac again, and that's when we came into the Mac itself rather than Apple, as they produced a piece of software which was a business prediction system, and it was multi-platform. So we wrote the programs. I did 7 years programming there, and we wrote the programs to go on PCs, various Unix systems, Linux, and of course, Apple Macs in their various guises. And that started with a Mac Plus, would you believe? Very nice. Got involved with all sorts of different projects there. My programming expertise was the low-level stuff. It was to do with backing up and communications, that sort of thing. I never got involved with the top end and the GUI. It was never something my head worked around. My head is still, always was, and always will be in the hardware.
Engineering.
That's what I like. Yes. I look at the front ends. I look at the games writers and go, I haven't got a prayer. I have no idea how they do that.
No, exactly. I look at it. I look at stuff like that and I go, where would you even start?
Exactly. Give me the low-level stuff. I'll do the firmware. That's not a problem. I know how to talk to the machine, but don't ask me to talk to the user. Yes, and that's the point at where the company ended up changing its name, because the product used to be called Gentium, and Intel, in their infinite wisdom, decided they didn't like a product called Gentium because at the time it was too close to Pentium. Yes. So they had a quiet word in our ear and told us to change the name. As luck would have it, they didn't do the dirty. They did assist us in paying for all of the name changes. So the product went from being called Gentium to Gentia, as there's no way you could change it too much. Otherwise, clients start to wonder what's going on. But it's when this company got bought out by an American company and they decided to make various people redundant. And this was 2003. I had a choice. I could go and work for some of the big boys down in London and commute every day, or I could do something up here. So we looked around a bit and decided that a 2-hour commute down there minimum, a 2-hour commute back minimum, then all the delays. So let's say if you're lucky, you've got 4 hours travel time. If you're unlucky, it could be 8 or more. I just decided I'm sure I can set my own business up. So we decided to set up a repair business, specializing in Macs, but we also cover PCs because there's just so many of the darn things out there.
Well, I will tell the listeners, I have been to Mark's workshop on various occasions, and getting in there is sometimes a little challenging, isn't it, Mark? As you climb over the Sun Spark workstations and the Pets and the Commodores and all the other various pieces, usually the wall of hard drives.
Yes, that wall is still there. We've added a few more bits and pieces recently. I've got a couple of Mac SE 30s that need going over. They do switch on, but they're not booting, so I need to sort that out. And that and the 2CXs, which are hanging around, some of those I've repaired already, but they need to go to Bletchley Park, back to the museum.
Yes, I remember the 2CX. That was, in fact, my first Macintosh, a 2CX. I had for a very long time, several of them in my shed. Still working, but eventually it reached the point of, nobody's ever going to want these 2CXs, LCs, and eventually with a heavy heart, I took them all down to the local recycling centre.
Yeah, one has to let go at some point.
Yeah, otherwise, I think I had about 4 2CXs, a couple of original G3 desktops, several LCs, I did toy with the idea of making a coffee table out of 4 compact Macs and say 6 LC boxes. And I thought it would
That'd
be
be quite a table.
yeah, I thought it would be quite. It would be even better if the compact Macs could be, showing a screensaver.
Yes, it would.
4 compact Macs for legs and several LC pizza boxes for the top. But there we go. A project I never actually enacted. I think my wife might have battered me to death with a 2CX if I'd actually built such a thing.
You could have been buried in 2CXs, yes.
Yeah. So there we go.
Can I say one thing just to say to anybody out there who's got an old Mac or think they've got one lurking around somewhere, the Computer Museum will always welcome them with open arms. If you've got one and you haven't seen it for a number of years, pull the case off, and if there's a battery in it, take it out. For the simple reason, the early batteries, the early rechargeable batteries they put in, they leak and they destroy them. And there are some which are starting to get rare because there's so much battery acid, we can't do anything with them.
So basically what you're saying is, rather than do what I did and dispose of them, if you still have some, send them to Bletchley.
Send them to Bletchley.
Okay.
They were welcomed with open arms.
We will put a link in the show notes for that, Mark. If you can send me a link, we will put that in the show notes for everybody later on. So there we go. Yes. And of course, moving on a little bit. So that's what you do. That's how you pay the bills and keep the lights on. And of course, you have been a member of the Suffolk Mac user group for. As long as there's been a Suffolk Mac user group, because I'm pretty sure you were a founding member. I think I came along I came along to meeting number 2, not because I didn't want to go to meeting number 1, but it was inconvenient. I think it was at a difficult time and a difficult place for me. But so we've both been going to the Mac user group. How long is it now? 11 years, 12 years.
At least, yes,
I think
something
the
like that.
Suffolk Mac user group. Anyway, which we've talked about on this show before, is a very active Mac user group. We have a lot of members, 100+ members.
Yes.
And from our research, barring probably the London mug, we're possibly one of the most active mugs in the country. So I know we've both been done that for many years, and you are, of course, a popular speaker because of your depth of experience there, and you've been on the committee for a very long time. What do you think about the fact that Mac user groups seem to be falling into decline? Are you a bit like me, of the opinion that it's a natural event, that as computers and the like become everyday objects, most people don't need a specialist group?
I tend to agree that the problem we've got is it was very easy in the early days of computing when things were much more open to people. You could literally get in there and do it yourself. These days, most machines have become much more of a closed box, especially when you consider things like the iPads. They are very much a closed box. There's very little you can do with them beyond just using them. So, yeah, their computers are becoming a commodity. They're an everyday item. Most people can find what they need online. A quick Google search or a DuckDuckGo search. Other search engines are available.
Available, indeed.
But yeah, I think that's the problem. It's so much is available where you don't need to go and talk to other people. But it's not just the computers. It's happening with so many things. But I think that is the main issue with the groups going down, is apart from a few diehards, people don't need it.
Well, I'm glad to say that at the moment our Mac user group is going strong. And in a few weeks, I'm having a bunch of guys from the Tucson Mac user group. We'll be doing a Tucson takeover of the show. But they're much the same as us. They're a fairly active group, but as they say, they would probably struggle to find a member who is under 50. And I think you would probably say the same about ours, wouldn't you, Mark?
I would agree with that. That is definitely the demographic these days. It's very unusual to find the young person in any of our meetings. It's a shame, but it's the way it is.
I very much feel that that for a younger generation, like Cutie, Melon, Ruth, like Danielle, my daughter, certainly like my son Joseph, they've grown up with these things. They don't consider them any more baffling than the TV. To be honest, they're just there, and I think they just accept them for what they are.
Yeah. I think you've hit it on the head there. That's very much the case. Looking at my own kids, they've grown up with the stuff. They very rarely need to come to me to sort anything out. Most of it, they do it themselves. It's like you said, we grew up with the television. They've grown up with computers and iPads.
Yeah, and as you say, of course, since the internet, the rise of the internet, I think, has also been a big factor, because although our Mac user group, started after the internet was a thing, but a lot of Mac user groups, of course, were established when there wasn't really much other way to get interaction with other, be they Mac users or Linux users or whatever. If you did something like that, if you were an Apple user or you was a Linux user or whatever, it was much less easy to get information now.
Yeah.
Isn't it? If you're doing something and you've got a problem, you can just go online, with your phone, if your computer's not working or whatever, and you can search it. You put it in a search engine, and you'll get taken to endless forums and blogs and technical pages that will assist you. But
yes,
20 years ago, that user groups were very much a thing, because that's how you shared information.
The user groups were the way you did it. If you were lucky, there were magazines available. You could ask them questions there, but then you're waiting for a month or two for an answer.
Yeah, exactly. I do think one of the big things that keeps the Suffolk Mac user group lively, as well as obviously the fact that a lot of effort goes into planning the meetings and getting speakers and all the rest, is the fact that we have our bulletin board, we have our message board.
And people use it on a daily basis. There's all sorts of things go up there.
Anything can be anything, and often, often quite well. When I say quite simple, I don't mean they're not simple if you don't know what you've done. But we had one the other day, didn't we? Oh, I appear to have accidentally turned on voiceover. How do I turn it off?
Yes.
Because I must have pressed some weird key combination and I've activated it, and now I don't know how to get rid of it. And that's one of those things where somebody can just type in and go, oh, well, it's it's Command Shift F5 or something, and it'll go away. But that, I think, helps keep our user group engaged.
It's definitely something that keeps our numbers up. Not everybody goes to the meetings, but a lot of people have joined the group because of the bulletin board.
Yes.
Not because of the meetings. As some of them come to the meetings as well, which I think one of the reasons we have some healthy level of meetings are some of the subjects we cover. They're not always completely Mac specific.
No.
So we do sometimes pull in other people. Whether we keep them afterwards, I don't know.
Yeah, well, that's always hard to tell, isn't it? But I think we as Suffolk Mac user, ex committee member, I think we've done a good job, over the years, and the Mac user group is still very interesting. We have great people come along, and of course we have members from a wide range of industries who use, from home users to people who work in the media, people like yourself who work in support, people like me who work in graphic design. We've got musicians, we've got photographers, so that does allow us to come up with a good selection of topics.
Yeah, it does. There is a really good range of people involved in the group, and I would just like to say that you were a committee member for a long time, and you've been a great support and done some great work for us.
Thank you. But, everybody who's served on the committee basically has always, put in plenty of effort. Some have served for longer, some for less. I mean, I stepped down not because it was too much effort, but because I felt I'd run out of run out of fresh things to contribute, and it was time to let somebody else have a finger in the pie, as it were. But no, I've been very pleased to be a member of the Mac user group for a very long time, and
yeah,
it's great. You know, it really is great. Yes, it's a pity that, you know, all of our members are basically 50 plus, I suppose, but that's just the way of the world, I think.
It is. It's just the way, like we said earlier, it's just the way things have gone. Whether it will improve or whether anybody can think of a way to bring the younger people in, I don't know. If you can, answers on a postcard, please.
Yes, send us your suggestions. It'll be interesting, actually, when I have the Tucson boys on, what their take is on it. I know that they've said basically the same, that, you know, they have a fairly active Tucson mug. But again, their demographic is basically all over 50. So,
well, that's very interesting, because it means it's not just a UK thing.
No, I think it's pretty general. There we go. Right. Well, I'll tell you what. I think we should take a break for John Nemo himself to do his hardware store, while you and I get a fresh cup of tea, Mark, and then we'll come back and we'll have a chat about the stories of the week.
All right, lovely.
All right, John, take it away.
3 very practical items today here in the hardware store, and I am recording again on my iPhone because these are definitely items for getting out and about. First one comes from our friends at Hex, H-E-X. The website is Hexbrand, Hexbrand, hexbrand.com. It's a backpack called the Hex Echelon, Echelon, Hex Echelon Patrol Backpack. Cost $120 in the U.S., and they give you free return if you don't like it. But you will like it because it's a tech everything backpack. The one they sent me is a neutral gray, sort of an 18% gray, and it's slimline, so it's not particularly stocky when it's on your back. And it's very lightweight without anything in it, with good padded straps and a nice loop carrying handle on the top. But the best thing is 2 front pockets and several interior zip pockets in a couple of different zones will carry umpteen different computers and iPads and phones, chargers, headphones, ear pods, lots and lots of compartments, and a beautiful leatherette base for standing up straight when it's loaded. So it's slim, it's affordable, it's lightweight, but it's very ruggedly constructed. And like everything we've seen from Hex brand, it will last a really long time. So look at the specs on the website, on the show notes, and this week's episode of the Essential Apple Podcast, and you can see what it looks like. And it's a brand new product, so you won't be seeing a lot of reviews yet, but this is one item that I can definitely recommend for carrying your gear, plus some personal stuff. But basically, load this thing up with tech, and you can put a couple of books and a couple of sandwiches. It's just the right size, weight, quality, and capacity. Now, we talked last week about the iPad, and I'm going to stick with the topic of the 10.5-inch iPad Pro, the previous model of the iPad Pro, because I mentioned that you're going to want to put a glass protector on the front with certain cases. And so the one I can recommend is the AMFilm, AMFILM tempered glass screen protector. Comes in a pack of 2, costs $12 in the US for a pack of 2, so a very good deal. It's easy to stick to the front of your pad. The alignment is a little bit tricky, so take your time. Make sure you're nice and clean, no distractions. Don't be outside where it's dusty and windy. And then you may get a bubble or two, and then you just take your time and press those bubbles out. And the great thing is, even if you have a bubble in it, like I inadvertently left a bubble in the 10.5 iPad, and they do have it for lots of different products also. I left a bubble in there, and you can't even see that bubble when the iPad is in use. So you get 2 of them for $12. I wrote to the company. I explained about a problem I was having. Their customer service is outstanding and almost immediate. They responded so quickly with the problem I was having about the bubble and the alignment, straightened me out in 1 or 2 emails. Absolutely excellent product, great price, and fabulous customer support and customer service. Now, unlike the cases last week, if you want a super almost nothingness protective case for the back of your iPad, again, this is about the 10.5 Pro. They make these for all different products. The company is ESR, and it's called the ESR Clear Hard Case for the iPad Pro 10.5. And it just covers the back. All the ports are exposed. It's just great. And if you want the minimalist protection, but still a good protection, you can put this on the back of your iPad or whichever device you get their case for. Then you put the AM film on the front, and you've got very, very ultralight, ultra slim protection. Now, I didn't want the see-through. I got the charcoal gray. I just thought it would be better long-term charcoal gray than the clear. But it looks really nice. I can recommend this from personal use. It's on the iPad right now. My wife is using it as we speak. So I'm going out for a stroll. I'm going to load up that hex pack, that hex echelon pack, and Mrs. Nemo is going to be padding away on the 10.5 using the ESR clear hard case and the AM film screen protector glass. You'll have the Amazon links for the last two, not the company links. You get the company link for hex, but the Amazon link for the other two products. That's it for Nemo's Hardware Store. Back next week.
Thank you, John. As ever, the links for those will be in the show notes. And I haven't mentioned it for a while, so I suppose I should mention it again in case anybody's not familiar. But if you want to buy something from Amazon, whether we've mentioned it on the show or not, please do us a favour, use our affiliate link, and we should get a small kickback on anything you purchase. You can find that link in the show notes or on the website. Right, having done that bit, well, the FaceTime, group FaceTime, I must point out, fix has been shipped. Apple have released a fix for that. I think they pushed that out on Thursday. They have agreed that they will reward the 14-year-old boy who discovered the bug. I've got a link here to the Washington Post, but as usual, it's all over the web. Well done, Apple, I think, really. It's just, and they have also apologised for the fact that his mother had to really struggle to report the bug. I think in many ways, that's the most disappointing part of that story. The fact that there was a bug in the group FaceTime calling, well, bugs happen, don't they? I don't know about you, Mark, if you followed this story at all. I did think the most disappointing part was how difficult it was for the boy and his mother to get Apple to pay any attention.
Yeah, it is ridiculous in this day and age when you consider that there is no such thing as a completely bug-free piece of software. It's all so complicated, nobody can think of every possibility. So it is a shame that it was so awkward to get it through, get it reported. Having said that, once it was reported, it does look like Apple responded in a timely and responsible manner.
Yes, I mean, they did what they could. They shut down the group FaceTime calling. They shut down the servers and whatnot, so the service was not available until a fix was pushed out. I'm led to believe that if you don't update, group FaceTime calling will still not work. So if you try and do a group FaceTime call with an unpatched version, that will not be available. And they've agreed to give the boy the bug bounty for finding it, which he's going to put towards his college fund, apparently, which is good for him. That was the bit, was that I know initially apparently they tried to report it by putting it on Twitter, but apparently they really went to town in so much as his mother actually signed up for a developer account, which costs $100 with Apple in order to put in a bug radar. I mean, that was really not very good at all. I mean, you find a bug like that. Admittedly, I'm sure Apple have bug reports flooding in, and they have to chore through, all of them to make sure, are they reproducible? Are they dangerous? How important are they? But at the same time, it shouldn't have taken all that effort by the boy's mother to get Apple to take notice of that bug.
No, it shouldn't. That was way too long.
And I believe Tim Cook has apologised and said that they will have an internal review of, how people can report problems to Apple. So there we go. Following on from that, Mark, this one's probably everywhere as well. The one I've got's in Wired. Some teen hacker / white hat, grey hat, call him whatever he is, has allegedly found an exploit that allows the creation of a malicious app which can can break into your keychain and steal your keychain items, which is very bad indeed.
It is bad if it's actually possible. I haven't seen anything that proves it's been done yet. That doesn't mean it can't. The chances are it is genuine. Microsoft have had this sort of issue for quite some time with all sorts of pieces of software. There's no way Apple are ever going to be immune from it. I think it's a much more secure system to start with, but these things will happen. I've got two minds on what's happening with this one, that the teenager is deciding he's not going to tell them how he managed to do it. Now, one aspect of that, I think, is he wants to be paid for it. Okay, I can understand that, especially if he's gone to some length to do it, but he needs to prove it. My concern with this is if it doesn't go through to Apple and this is genuine, that the world's hackers and, dare I say it, the world's nutters are going to look for this now and do their damnedest to reproduce it. And they certainly won't be telling Apple in any shape or form. That's the danger.
As I understand it, he's an 18-year-old German lad.
Yes. Yes, he is.
Apparently, according to Forbes, he found he could create an app that was able to read what was in the keychain without requiring explicit permission, which is very bad indeed if it's true. Mock malware did not require special privileges. Running a simple app is all that is required, he said. How can the malicious malware get onto the Mac in the first place? Well, all the usual ways, obviously. Anyway, he is not disclosed to Apple how it's been done. He's released apparently a video showing it being done. And I believe another security expert has examined it and said that yes, it's real. But we've only got their word for that, obviously.
Yes.
And yes, apparently the reason that he's saying he won't share it is because there is no bug bounty for Mac OS. I kind of see his point there, but I don't think he's going about it the right way. Either attempting to blackmail Apple by saying, give me money for this exploit or else.
Ultimately, he'll shoot himself in the foot with this because other people will look at it and there are bound to be, like this other expert looked at it, says, yes, it can be done. It does mean other people can look into it, and I'm sure that somebody will find it who's reasonable and tell Apple how it's done.
According to this quote, it's like they don't care about Mac OS, he said. Finding vulnerabilities takes time. I think that paying researchers is the right thing to do because we're helping Apple to make their product more secure. Okay, he wants to be paid for it. I kind of get that, but I think the implication is what he's threatening is if you don't pay me for it, I'll find somebody who will.
Yes,
and I'm pretty sure I'm sure there's plenty of people like the NSA who would be only too happy to bung him a wedge of cash for such an exploit, which is so all in all.
If they don't already know about it.
Yes, exactly. So I don't really know how I feel about that. I think overall he's probably being somewhat, selfish would be the obvious word, and perhaps a little greedy. That said, I don't think it would be unreasonable for Apple to pay a bounty for finding serious bugs. Why is there a bug bounty for iOS but none for the Mac? And apparently it's not a general. You have to be bloody invited onto the team. Apparently, you can't just if you or I found a massive security hole, we wouldn't get paid for disclosing it. So there we are. So bit of a bad week for Apple on that front, unfortunately.
Yeah, it is. I think Apple should do the same on macOS that they do on iOS. They should not separate them out and say we'll do it for one, but we won't bother with the other.
No, definitely. most other, Microsoft and people like that. I mean, they have, a verified, bug bounty. Lots of big companies do for obvious reasons. It's
Yes.
Besides which, if you don't, and somebody finds something, the temptation is always going to be to go on the black market and see how much you can get. Which is probably
sell it to the highest bidder.
Yes, with no care whatsoever for the damage that might be done.
No.
There we go. Apple apparently is extending its chip prowess into 5G modems, according to iPad Insight and lots of other people. The background to this, Mark, being a slightly more something that you enjoy. Apple is now working on developing its own 5G modems. It's not really much of a surprise, considering them and Qualcomm are bashing heads in courtrooms.
At loggerheads, I think is the term.
I think that is probably exactly the term. According to Reuters, Apple has been working on a 5G modem technology, but the early design efforts were handled by their supply chain unit. This will now be handled by Apple's in-house hardware group, responsible for the A series of processors, which means they will be headed up by Johnny Sarugi. I think that's how you pronounce it. The senior VP of hardware technology. The man who joined Apple in 2008 and spearheaded the A series development. Well, I don't think there's much surprise in this. In fact, in some ways, it's surprising they haven't done it before.
Oh, absolutely. There's no surprise with this sort of thing at all. They are gradually pulling in more and more of their own hardware, which gives them a much better position in the market. It will get rid of this Qualcomm nonsense. If they produce their own stuff, they're then independent of all the other people. They can do their own thing. No risk of somebody jumping up and down saying, you didn't agree to this and you did agree to that and now you've gone back on it. Plus, they can control the performance of it. And because they design it, it will be more tightly integrated with the rest of the system. So it should benefit the rest of us in the long term as well.
I think the main thing is, how long is it going to take? Because obviously they're going to have to avoid infringing any of Qualcomm's patents and possibly Intel's. Obviously, though, some stuff is frowned. But, they've got a top team. I mean, let's face it, the A series came from effectively nowhere and now runs rings around most other, even ARM processors. So, they've got a world-leading team.
They have. The speed they've come out with some of the new chip designs is quite frankly amazing.
Yeah, I mean, let's face it, they've been effectively ramping out a new generation every year.
Yes.
Which is almost unbelievable. So,
no, I suspect this modem hardware has been almost on the back burner for a number of years, and it's now got to the point where they've had to go, we need to do this, boys, and we need to finish it now.
Yeah, and they've obviously, as it said, being handled by the supply chain, so that probably means that, they were working with outsiders, outside contractors or whatever, and now they're saying we need to concentrate on this if we're going to push it up to the top level.
Yeah, they've got to bring it all the way in-house to get it moving properly now, and to keep the lid on things that they don't want other companies to see.
Yeah, exactly. If you're going to develop something like a modem from stack from the ground up, you certainly do not want anybody else to know how you go about doing it.
No,
that's deep secret.
Yes.
There we go. A billion users allegedly. Asimco analysing some of the figures that came out of the earnings report. Horace Dediu has said the global active installed base for iPhone has reached an all-time high at approximately 900 million devices.
Yes.
There are 360 million paid subscriptions across the services portfolio, and the installed base grew to 1.4 billion devices by the end of December. What he's done here is, if you go to the page, he's plotted various growth figures, and basically he's saying, in May 2010, I made a prediction that Apple would reach 1 billion users in 5 to 8 years. This was based on the first 100 million iOS users. Right now, this next sentence he's written doesn't actually make any sense. The company reached 1 billion active devices in a bit over 5 years, and is about to reach 1 billion users in 8 years. I don't think that's what he meant to write.
I think he should have proofread it before he put that up.
Yeah. I think what he means is it reached 1 billion active devices in 5 years and 1 billion users in 8. But there we go.
That's what makes sense, yeah.
I think that's what he means. However, what it's basically, as he's pointing out, the 900 million iPhone number is the biggest clue because it's one of the few devices that effectively most people only have one of.
Yes.
And he's using that as a way to calculate the installed user base most accurately. So, and growth, it's still growing. He's predicting it will continue to grow and expects to see 2 billion users in, I forget what he said, but wherever. So, from an Apple user's point of view, good news.
It's good news. And I think he's right. Looking at the way things are going, looking at the way the market has been changing since I've been in technology, and the iPhone in particular, I've got clients who still wouldn't touch a Mac. Don't know why, but they wouldn't. But you'd never, ever take their iPhone away from them.
No, that's, I mean, I bought one of the first iPhones, an iPhone 1. It wasn't immediately, the device it is now, but I think by the time I had an iPhone 4, I was already of the opinion that if push came to shove, I would give up my laptop before my iPhone.
Yes, no, I jumped on the bandwagon. I waited. I'm one of these people, that waits a bit normally, and I always advise all clients when something brand new comes out, if it's business critical, don't do it. Wait. Let the other poor suckers find the problems. But the iPhone, I started off with the 3GS, and I think it's about that point that it really was taking a hold. It really gripped, and it's a game changer. It was an enormous game changer.
Yes, it was. I think it was the 3GS that did it. I mean, the original iPhone, obviously there were no apps. It was still a game changing device for me. Changed me from a mobile phone hater to somebody who never went anywhere without their iPhone.
Yes.
But
yes.
It was the 3GS, I think, was where it really took off. The second iteration, the 3G, obviously introduced 3G because the first one was 2G, which was a bit feeble.
Yeah, that's where the data rate went up and it became, I would call, usable. Prior to that, if you're trying to do anything data-wise, you were still sitting there and waiting.
Yes,
and waiting,
waiting and waiting. But yes, you're right. The iPhone as a game changer. That's that constitutes, as we could see there, a good 2/3 of the installed user base.
Yes,
it's 900 out of 1.4. But it's still growing. iPads are still growing. Yes, there's a lot of boo-hooing at the minute about iPhone product cycles extending out and people keeping them longer. And, I said on this show, in order to get the new XR, I had to take a 3-year contract rather than the 2-year contract, or at least to, maintain my payment rate.
Yeah.
I could have had a 2-year contract if I wanted to pay more, but, I'm quite happy at the level of cash I outlay per month.
Yes.
And so I was almost effectively forced into a 3-year contract. I don't think Apple, despite a lot of boo-hooing, I don't think Apple are all that upset about that, really. Wall Street might be upset about it. Shareholders might get the hump about it. But Tim Cook has said on more than one occasion, we run Apple for the long term.
Yes.
And I think the long term is, you get more loyal customers by selling them something and saying, well, if you want to keep that for 4 or 5 years before you replace it, you go ahead. And on top of which, by the way, that's good for the planet, good for reusability, good for all sorts of reasons.
Well, it makes for much happier users as well. If you think that your device is going to be useless and obsolete in 2 years, do you really want to spend the level of cash we have to at the moment on them? And I think the answer for most people is no. I'm not doing a 2-year swap just because the thing's not going to do what it should do.
No, I would certainly not be happy to be paying in the region of £1,000 to have something which I think, well, I'm going to have to replace it in 2 years.
Yeah.
I have traditionally replaced my iPhone on a 2-year cycle because that's basically, if you're paying for the contract, there's no reason not to. That's the sensible thing to do. You keep your phone for 2 years and then you either sell it or give it to somebody else or whatever and get a new one. But
yeah, my cycle has often been 3 to 4 years, and there's no particular reason for it. It's just how it goes. Although having said there's no particular reason, normally when I'm looking at things is the way their product is changed. I've moved on a bit. I've looked at what the next one can do and decided, well, actually, it can't do enough over and beyond what the current one does for me to decide to go to the next one. So I wait a bit longer. And then when they've got 2 or 3 generations away, all of a sudden it's, well, actually, yeah, I can see that one now. I like what the new one can do. It's far enough away from the original one. I'll move on and then give the old one to a member of the family.
Yeah. And I think that's very, we've talked about it on this show a lot, and I'm pretty sure Apple do plan for the long run, and as their user base is going up, I think that a lot of that is because why are people prepared to invest £1,000 or more into their phone? Because if they know, if you say, well, I could get 4 years out of that and probably still sell it and get a reasonable chunk of change,
which you can,
you are likely to consider that to be a good investment, and you will you build customer loyalty that way, and customer loyalty means ecosystem stickiness, and ecosystem stickiness means services money.
Yes,
people get hooked in, and then
we've definitely got people that have gone into Apple via the iPhone. They've got themselves an iPad, and then they've got themselves a Mac, and then when somebody suggests, well, actually, this Android device will practically do what you want, but it's cheaper. And as soon as they start talking about, well, how do I move? It doesn't happen. It doesn't happen. They're so wedded to the way the Apple just, in the main, just works. The thought of moving to something else and struggling again puts them off. Yeah,
exactly. And I read earlier today. I should have put it in the show notes. Really, I read a little piece about somebody done an impromptu survey on Reddit, I think, which was, as an Android user, what, if any, features of iOS, do you envy? And there was a fair selection. But interestingly enough, one of the top ones was the way that on the iPhone you can tap the header bar of any, web page or Twitter or whatever and scroll back to the top automatically without having to, manually. If you've scrolled a long way down a page, if you just tap the top of the page, you will scroll straight back to the top. That's apparently very, very something Android users really, a lot of them really wish they could have.
It's the little things.
It is. And then, of course, the other ones that came up were, iMessage, the way that iMessage works so well. And apparently the handoff features, the continuity/handoff features.
Yeah.
Something that a lot of Android users say that they, would really might be tempted to shift for.
Well, it's the beauty of a company like Apple, where everything is so well integrated. You're not dealing with 3rd, 4th, and 5th parties and praying it might work if you're lucky, and one person makes a small change and everybody's breaks.
Yeah, and of course the other one that came up was, for a lot of Android users, unsurprisingly, the effectiveness of Apple's updates, because unless you're very lucky and you're on a Pixel or a very top end device from a specific set of manufacturers, getting the updates to Android can be painful.
It can. I've seen it. I've had to deal with it on occasions for people, and I don't like it.
No, it's that is, Google say they're working on it, but I don't know. I don't think they're ever going to fix that because they let it out for free to all and sundry. You've got this weird way in which Android gets updated and then it goes out to the manufacturers who then, reskin it and test it, and then they give it to the carriers who have to test it, and many devices just never get an update.
There's too many layers.
I know Google have done they've done something to improve security patches. Apparently security patches can now be pushed out directly from Google. but actual OS updates, no, doesn't happen.
No.
There we are. Well, Apple's retail chief, Angela Arhendts, I think that's how you pronounce it. I know everybody seems to pronounce it differently. Is leaving Apple in April. This is all over the web, unsurprisingly. It came as a bit of a surprise to, came out of nowhere, as it were. And interestingly enough, she says that she's not got any explicit plans on what to do next. She's going to take the summer off, apparently, and have a long holiday. Well, why shouldn't she? I don't blame her for that, per se. But that's not normally how people leave companies like Apple, is it? They tend to be, going somewhere to do something.
Yeah, they do tend to want to do something else, but it's not unusual for them to be there for a relatively small number of years, then move on. It tends to be the nature of people at this level.
Yeah.
It's very unusual for somebody at this level to stay for a long time. Very unusual.
I mean, I know Apple does, do quite well at retaining, high-level staff, often for many years. But we've seen. I mean, we get these comes up 2 or 3 times a month. It will say, top iOS engineer leaves to go to Google to work on Fuchsia, or top AI man from Google comes to Apple to work on Siri, or battery tech goes to Tesla, or whatever. And I think like you, I don't think there's a great deal to be read into that. I don't think there is. I think a lot of people at that very top level, people who are, I don't know, if you're in the 10 top best chip planners in the world, you can go wherever you want to do whatever you want.
Yes.
And Apple have a very good chip team, and they obviously must consider that to be a very exciting and challenging job, and nobody wants to leave it. But if you're the Google AI man and Apple say, would you like to come and work with us, and we will give you a free hand to help build out Siri, that might seem like that's a very interesting challenge, because it would
be a very interesting challenge.
I'm pretty sure that people who work at that level, the money is not actually that important. If you're getting paid 25 million a year or something, then does it make any difference if Google offer you 30 million, or you go to a job that only pays a mere 20 million? I think you might be able to tighten your belt and manage.
I don't think it will take much tightening.
No, I think, people who work at that level go where they want in order to seek challenges, and stimulation.
Yes, they're moving on because of what they want to do and what they think they can do at this place, and it's going to be more interesting. Some of them will do it because they want to make a bigger name for themselves, as if they haven't made a big enough name anyway. But as you say, the money, the finance side of it, for most of them, no. It doesn't add up.
No. There's been some speculation, did she leave or was she pushed? And there's this, people writing things like Apple's retail is at a crossroads. Sorry, you what?
No.
What? Have you been to an Apple store? The places are often rammed to the gunnels. There's people saying, oh, well, if you go there when there's not a new release, there's nobody there. I don't think you've been in an Apple store recently then, pal. And I think, she's achieved what she set out to do, to be honest. She's, remade Apple's retail stores in, a different image.
Yes.
And I suspect now she feels that she's done that. It's time to move on and do something else. Go somewhere else.
Yeah.
I don't
have a break while you find something else.
Yeah. I don't think it's a case of, bye, Angela. Thanks for all the beans.
No, I don't think it is. I think we'd be seeing an awful lot more, or actually probably a lot less, certainly from people like Tim Cook.
Yes.
If there was a problem.
I mean, Tim Cook said something, I didn't read it explicitly, but something along the lines of, thanks for all your great work, Angela, and, it's been a pleasure, and we wish you all the best, and all that sort of thing. That's not what happens when people get ousted. When Forstall or whatever were ousted, they were sent on gardening leave and told to make those statements for 18 months or something.
Yeah.
No, I think this is simply a case of saying, well, I've done what I need to do, and I don't think there's anything else for me to do here. Take it.
Well, I think the telling paragraph from CNBC was, and I'll just read it out, is in an interview with Vogue Business published late last month, Arhendts said a part of her still missed fashion, but she was pulled to Apple by the work it was doing at the time.
Well, there you go. Yes.
So I personally think that sums it up.
Yeah. She's gone there with a thinking, right, I think I can, improve their already fantastic retail. And now she feels she's done it. There's no more to be said on the matter, really. No. I think she, someone else may change the mix or do it differently, but I think she feels that she's fulfilled the challenge and now it's time to move on to something else. I think that's very much how these people work. And, following on from that, we've got the cult of Mac here. HoloLens creator leaves Apple AR headset team. Well, he left the Microsoft HoloLens team to come and work with Apple on their alleged AR headset, and now he's moving on. So, I think that very much says exactly the same thing.
He's moved on. He's done what he could at Microsoft. He's come across to Apple and said, okay, that's it. I've done my bit here. Now, marching on again. Yeah,
I suspect, what does it say here? This is on the cult of Mac. Avi Barziv was working on a secret, almost certainly a project for Apple's AR glasses. Working for Microsoft in 2010, Barziv developed the HoloLens initial concept, first demos and architecture. And then, obviously, he's come to... he spent 4 years at Amazon after he left Microsoft. Then he was hired by Apple to lead experienced prototyping team for a new effort to develop key prototypes to rapidly prove concepts, explore, educate, and build support.
Yeah, when you look at what he's done before, if you look at each stage each company he's gone through, he's an ideas man. He doesn't bring anything to the market. He does proof of concept, does some development on it. I think he then, once he's got people pointing in the right direction, he moves on to the next one.
Yeah, as it says here, his LinkedIn profile indicates he stopped working at Apple last month, and he told Variety, I left my full-time position at Apple in January. I had the best exit one can imagine. I have only nice things to say about Apple, and I will not comment on any specific product plans. Yeah, you can see very much. He's a development guy. He's the, right, this, what do you want to do? You want to make AR glasses, right? This is where we start. This is how we go about building that. This is how you get it to work. Right, there you go. There's a framework. I'll leave the rest of it to you boys.
Yeah.
He's a prototyper, basically. That seems very much what he does. And again, I suspect he's at the top of his field. He's very much sought after, and he's done what he feels he needs to do, and now he's off to look for another challenge.
Yes, he's now off to go and play somewhere else with some more new ideas.
Yeah, exactly. Popular iPhone apps. This is another sort of semi-security story, really, this one, Mark. Popular iPhone apps were secretly recording your screen for analytics purposes. And this included, people like Hotels.com and
Expedia as well.
Expedia and Air Canada and a whole bunch of people. Not quite sure how this came to light. Apparently, that some people were using a thing called Glassbox. Yes, thank you for that pop-up. Multiple popular iPhone apps from major companies are using an intrusive analytics service that captures detailed data like taps, swipes, screen recordings without knowledge. TechCrunch apparently broke this story. Yes, we've got Abercrombie and Fitch. I'm not quite sure who they are. I've heard the name. We've got Expedia. We've got Air Canada. Yes, Glassbox does not require its customers to mention the usage of the screen recording feature in their privacy policies.
That's, to me, that's wrong to start with.
Yeah.
And anything that has to do with privacy should be mentioned. You should have the option.
Yep. And it says here, with no way to detect this is going on, all customers can do is refuse to use the apps and services of companies which are found to be engaging in shady analytics and tracking purposes without a clear privacy policy. I'm not quite sure how this came. Like, as it says there, TechCrunch apparently broke the story. But subsequent to that, Apple have promptly said app developers must disclose or remove screen recording code. Again, on TechCrunch. So Apple have basically said, don't do that or else. Stop it. Thank you. App developers are being told to remove or properly disclose their use of analytics code, which allows them to record how a user interacts with their phones. An Apple spokesperson has said protecting user privacy is paramount. Our App Store review guidelines record that apps request explicit user consent.
Yes, which is the right way to do it. It's these people are trying to bypass the system.
Yeah. We have notified developers in strict violation of these privacy terms and guidelines, and we will take immediate action if necessary. So there we are. So they've been found out. This is the sort of thing that we're going to get more and more of, I'm sure, Mark. You know, this whole
yes, we will.
Bloody surveillance capitalism malarkey. Yeah. And this is, I'm pretty sure, why Tim Cook is, you know, beginning to position Apple's privacy stance as a selling point. Okay, well, that's about it for Apple stories. Sort of following on from that, I guess we could have a quick look at some security stories. Microsoft has said they do not want you to use Internet Explorer anymore. Thank you very much.
Yes.
Quite right. This shouldn't really be news. Somebody seems to be thinking it's some kind of weird thing for them want to do. But you know, Internet Explorer's what, 5 years out of date now?
At least,
I think
it's a long way out of date. And some versions of Internet Explorer simply won't work with some sites anymore.
No.
Which is a good thing because it's all security linked.
Yeah, Microsoft really doesn't want you to use Internet Explorer anymore. Microsoft call it a compatibility solution, not a browser. Okay, apparently Microsoft killed off Internet Explorer 4 years ago, choosing Edge as its modern browser for Windows 10. Internet Explorer lived on as plumbing for Windows and business compatibility, but Microsoft doesn't support it with any new web standards. It is legacy code. So
yeah, I can tell you why Internet Explorer still exists for some people. When you look at some of the car manufacturers, the service manuals that they supply to their dealers quite often use Internet Explorer and the ActiveX controls that go with it. Without that, they can't view the service manuals properly.
Yeah.
One would hope that at some point they will produce manuals which use something which doesn't rely on a particular platform. But beyond that, yeah, it's dead. Internet Explorer should not be used anymore, and it shouldn't have been used for several years.
No, it's Internet Explorer 11 uses an enterprise mode so that IT admins have to add the sites they want to use old versions of web standards with. Internet Explorer is a compatibility solution, not a browser that a business should be using day to day or for web browsing. There we go. I put that in because it seems to be being put around as if it's some sort of like, wow, you know, Microsoft are telling us one of their own products is no good. No, they've been telling us that for years. I mean, yes. The minute they brought out Windows 10, I think they said you should all use Edge.
Yes.
Whether you think Edge is a good browser or not is another matter altogether. And then, of course, the latest version of Edge is now based on a different engine to the original Edge. So there we go. No, you should stick to, you know, we should all stick to good modern browsers. Lots of people, you know, cite Chrome. I personally say I wouldn't touch Chrome with a barge pole. There we go. I use Safari most of the time. My other two favourite fallbacks are Vivaldi and Clicks. Very much Clicks now, which is part of the Ghostery suite. There we go. It is very good, actually. I really like Clicks a lot. If it wasn't for the whole ecosystem stickiness, I would probably be using Clicks as my primary browser. But there are reasons I use Safari, and that is to do with the Apple handoff and so on. Right. Creepy incidents with Nest cameras prompt password warning from the Independent. Guess what? People not setting decent passwords on their internet exposed, you know, Internet of S things is causing trouble. Again, something we're going to see a lot more of, I'm pretty sure. There's some pretty creepy stories in this. You know, somebody hearing a man, you know, watching and or speaking to a small child in the nursery, that sort of thing. Secure your stuff, people.
Yeah, this is in a funny way, this is not new. It may be new for Nest to have come up with it, but it's not a new problem. It's a very, very old problem. People out there, you must change your passwords. You must not leave the default password on a device that's connected to the internet. It's so easy to guess a default password. There are certain ones that the vast majority of manufacturers use. It doesn't take many seconds for anybody to guess what it is. Once they've got it, not only can they get in and do something horrible, they can then change that password on that device to whatever they want. So you can't get in. You need to factory reset it and pop a sensible password in. But this, like we said, this is not new. This is old. People out there, you have got to change the password.
Yeah, you have very much so. More and more, we're being told over and over again, use a password manager. Don't reuse sites and, don't reuse your passwords across sites. And this stuff does get tedious and it gets difficult. You need to use a password manager. I rely very heavily on, the Apple iCloud keychain.
As do I.
It's not, I'm told it's not necessarily the best, but it's there, it's free, and it works. It will generate secure passwords for you. It will remember them for you. It will port them across all your Apple devices for you. Very much so. We were talking last week, obviously, about, the internet of troublesome things. And most of it comes down to the cheap stuff is insecure and rubbish. And even people who buy better stuff like Ring or Nest or whatever often don't secure them properly. Plus, of course, with these collections 1 through 5 dumping however many billion credentials, credential stuffing is becoming a huge problem, which relies on the fact that lots of people may come up with a complicated password, but then they use it everywhere, which is very foolish.
Yes. It's almost as bad as leaving the default password, because what people fail to realize is once they've got that password from one site, the hacker or whoever happens to be trying it will try that same password at everything else they know you go to.
Yeah. And unfortunately, these leaks are endless. These breaches are endless. I mean, I don't even bother to, note them down anymore. But I think Mumsnet had a data breach this week. Marriott Hotels had a breach. Several airlines have had breaches. This is all recent stuff, within the last month or so.
Yes.
Never mind the huge collections being dumped. So there we go. Talking of which, I will just jump forward then to Worth a Chirp. And that is because I am going to experiment with a password manager called Password Boss for iOS and Mac. It has a free level available. There is a paid higher tier which adds some extra features, but I'm going to try that out and see how I get on with that. Other password managers are available. Popular ones, of course, being 1Password, LastPass, Dashlane, many of which, all of which I believe is subscription based. So, I have a slight problem with that, really, because you've got to keep paying to have your service maintained. I don't know. Is that unfair? I don't know. It just depends. Some of them are quite expensive, though. That's my problem.
Yeah. I'm not a fan of the subscription model. I can understand why they do it from a business point of view. It's a no-brainer. It's a consistent moneymaker. For the individual, and even from my point of view, I don't like subscriptions. I'd like to know that if I'm going to buy something, I'm going to pay for it once, and that's it. The only time I'd accept I have to pay for it again is if there is a major release of the product, a new version of the product, which gives me a lot more than the old one did. What I don't want to see is my current version of whatever I purchased being made obsolete, so I'm forced to buy the new one.
Yeah, that's also true. The only thing I effectively personally pay a subscription for is my Proton Mail and Proton VPN. I'm not really a big fan of subscriptions either, but then that's an ongoing service, isn't it? You know what I mean?
Yes, it is.
And I feel, I don't know why, in some ways I feel that because that's a service, it's okay to pay for that, on an ongoing basis.
Well, I would agree with that. When you consider your broadband as a service, you subscribe to that sort of thing. They are services you want them ongoing. But I think it's different when you want to purchase or you want to get hold of a particular item, be it hardware or software. I want to pay for it once and be done with it.
So anyway, there we are. So I'm trying out Password Boss. I have looked at several of the others, but yeah, I guess I would not feel so bad about paying a subscription for some of them if they didn't actually add up to quite a lot of money. Particularly where often you have to pay one subscription for the Mac and one for iOS. And if you're an Apple user and you're making use of both platforms, that can actually become really quite expensive.
Yes.
I don't know. I'm not really sure I feel that it's fair to be charging you twice for a password manager on two different platforms. There we go. That's my personal take. Anybody, I know lots of people who swear by 1Password. They think it's the best thing since sliced bread. And if you're happy to do that, that's absolutely fine. There we go. I'm going to try out Password Boss. Lots of others are available, as we say. While we're on the worth of chirps, Donny Yankelo has found another freeware winner. This is called Recasto on the App Store. Apparently, he converted 72 JPEGs into PDF files in 2 seconds using this freeware app. I believe it also... it's convert PDF to images or images to PDF. So if you're into that, you might want to look into that. It's called Recasto. Link in the show notes, of course. Well, backtracking a little, Mark, we've got... I'm just going to mention this rather than discuss it. What does consent tracking really mean? This is on the Malwarebytes blog. It's a good read. It's quite long. It basically points out the difference between what most people think they're consenting to when they click, I accept you, doing a certain amount of tracking when you go to a site, and what it often actually tracks, which is usually a lot more than you might be aware of. So that's worth a read if you're interested in finding out what a lot of sites actually mean when they say, do you consent to us tracking you? And then, this was a good one. This was a good one, wasn't it, Mark? This caught our attention. Tokyo has succeeded in its plan to make the 2020 Olympic medals out of recycled gadgets. I've got a link to The Verge here. I believe there's The Guardian had a piece on it as well. On the surface, we're going to make the medals out of recycled gadgets. Yeah, crushed up plastic and glass, when it can be some sort of weirdo things. No, Tokyo organising committee for the 2020 Olympic and Paralympic Games has announced it is expecting to meet targets for a plan to make the athletes' medals from discarded electronics. There were huge levels of support from the public and companies across Japan and from national and international athletes, which resulted in municipal authorities collecting about 47,500 tonnes of e-waste, including apparently more than 5 million disused phones handed in at NTT stores. Collection stations were placed in post offices and public buildings. The committee's target of 2,700 kilos of bronze was met last June. 93.7% of the 30.3 gold target and 85.4% of the 4,100 kilo silver target had been extracted by October. There we go. Based on the number of devices which have been collected, the Tokyo 2020 committee says there will be enough material to reach their goal. The programme will end on March 31st, and the Olympic and Paralympic medal designs will be revealed in the summer. And they're all going to be made from precious metals recovered from e-waste, which is fantastic.
I think it's absolutely brilliant. It's recycling in the extreme.
Yep.
I don't know who had the original idea, but I personally think it's brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
Fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. 5 million disused phones. But it also goes to show, doesn't it, just how much stuff is actually recoverable from these.
Yes. Yeah. It's a good way of showing people just how much metals and how much precious things are in the phones and can be reused. It's not just, well, you can't do anything with that because look how small it is, throw it away.
No.
They really do recover the metals from them.
I mean, we've got gold, silver, bronze, and then we know, of course, that they contain lots of other, rarer metals as well, gallium and things like that.
Yes.
All sorts of rare earth metals and weird and wonderful material, all of which, of course, is expensive to get in the first place, and often, quite harmful to the environment if just dumped back into the ground in its raw state.
Yes.
So,
hats off.
Hats off
to Tokyo.
In fact, that would be. Do you know what I would think? I would like to see. Perhaps the International Olympic Committee make some sort of commitment to do that going forward. On a regular basis. That Olympic medals are always made out of recycled e-waste.
It would make perfect sense. Tokyo have proved it can be done.
Yeah, very much so. Well, whether they do or not is a whole different kettle of fish. But hats off there to the Tokyo Committee and everybody, of course, who generously handed in their e-waste. I think that's a great story. And as you say, it's a brilliant consciousness raiser.
Yes. Yes, somebody had to actively decide to do this. This wasn't a spur of the moment thing, was it?
No, they've obviously, come up with this idea, and it's great that they've achieved their target or almost achieved their target. Much of it ahead of time. And yeah, I guess it's a big way to promote. Don't chuck your old electronics away, and don't just put them in a drawer and have no idea what to do with them. Do go to, put them in if they're dead or broken or whatever, do take them somewhere where you can put them in the e-waste recycling, because they do actually get recycled.
Yes.
That's the other thing, isn't it? I think a lot of people wonder if they're just being bilked, as it were, by, take your e-waste and put it in this bin in the, in the BT shop or whatever. Does it actually get recycled, or do they just put it in a big skip and tow it away,
And dump it with the rest of the waste, yeah.
Yeah. I'm always a little bit wary. I mean, I put a lot of my stuff. I'm fairly active in recycling my home waste, to the metal and the paper and the plastics and whatnot. But I do often look at my my recycling bin as they take it to tip it in the back of the truck, and I wonder how much of that is actually recycled, or if it just goes somewhere where they sift sort of 70% of it out and put it back in the black truck and take it down the landfill anyway. There we go. I'd like to hope that that's not what happens, but you never know, do you? You're never sure how much of it is actually recycled. There we go. Well, the other story, Spotify has bought Gimlet and Anchor to ramp up its podcast game. That's a bit inside baseball, that one. Well, it is what it is. Gimlet, apparently, I've never heard of Gimlet.
Neither had I.
No, but apparently they're a podcasting platform of some note. And Anchor are a service who produce a kind of all-in-one podcasting solution / hosting for beginners, much like Opinion or what's the other one? There are several who do that, who will basically provide you with a tool that will allow you to record your podcast and edit it and host it for whatever. I'm not sure what I feel about that, actually. I mean, this podcast goes out on Spotify because our host allows us to send it to Spotify. The fact that Spotify introduced that, I guess, would indicate that they're trying to get a foothold in, with podcast listeners.
Yes.
It's a good thing in some ways. If the downside would be if Spotify start trying to corral content on their platform. I could see them trying to get big podcasters, quote unquote, to their platform and sign exclusivity deals. So, only available on Spotify, which would be a bad thing.
It would be a very bad thing. It's too limiting.
Yeah. And would, end up breaking up podcasting into sort of, at the moment, everybody seems to agree that it's fair. If you do a podcast, you can place it a whole load of places, this podcast obviously goes to iTunes. It goes out to Overcast and all the other podcast people from there. It's on Google Podcasts, which I think it only works in America, but it goes there. I put it on Spotify because I can.
Yes.
There we go. There's been a lot of to and fro about this. I don't know. It's too early to tell, in my view. I'm not going to castigate Spotify. I mean, they're a business. They're absorbing some smaller companies in order to up their penetration into podcasting. That could be a very good thing. It could help, raise more people's awareness of podcasts, or it could turn into a quite bad thing.
Unfortunately, I think it's one of those where we're going to have to do a watch this space.
I think you're right, Mark. I think that will very much be a watch this space. And also, apparently, Spotify will soon be banning accounts which use ad blockers.
I can understand that when you
I'm not
consider they're doing that for the free users, but not for the subscribers.
I think the point is, if you subscribe, you don't get any ads, do you?
You don't.
So you wouldn't need one. And to be honest, I don't disagree with this. I don't. I mean, I use ad blockers on the web, to keep most of the crap out of the way. And yes, I'm sorry if some people feel that that's, robbing people of their income, but advertisers have kind of done it to themselves, in my view. They've been so egregious that most people cannot stand the adverts.
Yeah. When you come across some websites where there's almost more adverts than there is content, and
yes, you do.
That's what winds people up.
Yes, it is. And often, sometimes very egregious adverts that pop up and play videos and do all sorts of things which are intensely annoying. But in this case, you're listening to the music on Spotify for free, and the deal is they play you ads.
They play you ads. And as you can see from the last, looking at the news they've got on here, one of their statements is that those ads, plus its 96 million paying subscribers, helped Spotify record the first profit in its 13-year history last quarter. Without those ads, they would not be making a profit yet.
Well, no, and to be honest, I don't find the ads, not that I'm a big Spotify user, because I'm not. In fact, I don't use Apple Music. I don't really use Spotify. For the occasional times I want to listen to a bit of music, I tend to go to Amazon, Amazon Prime Music, because I get that chucked in with my Amazon account. So why would I not use that? But
I tend to use the Apple Music, so I don't deal with Spotify. But I do know my older son uses Spotify. I've heard the music in the garage sometimes, and all of a sudden there'll be a few seconds worth of an advert. Not in the middle of the music, but between some tracks, and it's only some tracks. It's not like you've got music ad.
No, it plays
music ad.
It's
I don't like adverts, but I wouldn't complain about that when I'm getting a free service.
No, nor would I. And it's no worse. It's certainly no worse than in most commercial radio stations.
That's true.
I quite often listen to Planet Rock, or sometimes Absolute 80s, which all come out of the same stable, by the way.
Yes.
And, they play 12, 15 minutes of music, and then there's an ad break, and a couple of ads.
Yeah.
Why, that's no worse than watching ITV. That's no different to listening to commercial radio. Spotify ads are very much the same. And if you're getting something for nothing, I think that's perfectly fair. I mean, what are you going to do by blocking out the ads? Get 30 seconds of silence? I mean,
absolutely.
The ads are not, they are not intrusive in my mind. If you listen to Spotify, you get some tracks, and then you get a couple of ads, and then you get more music. It's just like listening to the radio, really. So, no, in this case, I'm fully with Spotify. I think that's fair enough.
I would agree. I'm with you. I'm with them as well.
Yeah, not Norley. And I think pretty much it was just the last story that we were looking at, Mark, before we wrap up. I think cybersecurity funding to take academic ideas to market, and this was on Gov UK. Actually, a weird thing, isn't it? It's not quite what it appears to be, but
no, it's not.
It says
it's
here
actually a competition.
Yeah, it says researchers based in UK academic institutions can apply for a share of up to 800,000, which, it's not exactly, I know it's not small beer, but it's not big money, to support them in commercialising cybersecurity innovations. The UK claims to be the best place in the world to do business online. The government's national cybersecurity strategy sets out a plan for the country to be secure. Apparently, this is in fact a competition, as you said, Mark. The Department for Digital Culture, Media and Sport. That's a bloody mouthful, isn't it? It's a strange thing to mix together as well, isn't it? Digital Culture, Media and Sport. Anyway, be that as it may, that's the government. They love to make up stupid departments. Working with Innovative UK has up to 800,000 to help academics accelerate and take to market ideas for improving cybersecurity. The competition is designed to increase the number of ideas from UK academic research turned into businesses. Okay. A previous competition saw 7 teams progress through 3-month market validation phase to establish new ventures and build work prototypes. Well, it's a competition. There's going to be 2 phases, and it says here we expect total project costs to range between £5,000 and £32,000. And researchers could get up to 100% of their eligible project costs.
One assumes that depends on how viable the project is.
Or yes, how speculative. So there you go. You could get up to, apparently, if you're an academic working in cybersecurity and you have a brilliant idea, you can enter this competition and get up to £32,000 to help you turn it into a business. Apparently, slightly odd one, that I have to say.
Yeah, it is a slightly odd one. It's almost strikes me as a Dragon's Den of cybersecurity.
Yes, it's a bit like that, isn't it? It's like, really? There we go. Anyway, interesting. There we go. That is pretty much all of the stories, I think, Mark. I think we've done them all now.
I think.
And we've been going sort of the regulation amount of time. So this is where we wrap up. What I normally do is ask you to promote yourself and or any other causes you wish to bring to the fore.
Right. Yes, if you've got any Mac-related issues or also other computer issues, as we deal with both Macs, Unix systems, and the dreaded word, as we say, Windows, please give us a call. Our website is, I'm sure, in the notes. It is indeed, yeah. You can find us there. Once you've got hold of us, give us a call. We come out to you. We do not expect people to bring a 27-inch iMacs up to our workshop. Quite often, it's not necessary. It's why we come out. Many a person's back has been saved by us doing an on-site visit. As for causes, if anybody's feeling flush, one cause we often like to help is the St. Elizabeth Hospice at Ipswich, where my niece was looked after for a year or so while she was suffering from cancer. So if anybody's got deep pockets, got any money you want to give away, they are trying to put a new building up specifically for young people. So they are heavily searching for money now. Okay, well, I'll put that in there for you, Mark. I'll put a link. I'll dig up their website and put a link. There we go. And you are on the Twitters as at Suffolk Macs, by the way, aren't you? Not that you tweet much. You don't tweet much, but you know. Not an awful lot. But hardly ever think to look at it unless I'm in the middle of a rant. Well, there we go. I am, of course, on the Twitters as at Serenak, and that's SERENAK. The show is at Essential Apple. All our stuff is, of course, over at essentialapple.com. And I think that's about it. Oh, if you'd like to join us in the Slack room, follow the link in the show notes, and then you will be admitted to the inner sanctum of the Slack room. And I think that's probably about it. So I think what we'll do then, Mark, is we'll all say goodbye. Goodbye.
You've been listening to the Essential Apple podcast, and I'd like to say if you enjoy the show and would like to support us, feel free to go over to the website essentialapple.com and you will find links to both Patreon and the Pinecast Tips Jar, where you can make a donation towards the costs of the show, or even if you're really keen, you could set up a recurring payment. And thank you very, very much to all the people who already do support us. We really do appreciate you very much indeed. This show is, of course, part of the My Mac podcasting network, where you can find a variety of other shows like the My Mac podcast with Guy and Gaz, the G-Men, Tech Fan with Tim and David, the Nintendo Club podcast, the geekiest show ever, the Three Geeky Ladies, Bart Bouchots and his wonderful Let's Talk Apple, and possibly some more that I've forgotten. So why not go over to mymac.com, take a look at the available podcasts, and take a listen.
So it is never late, Fred Beggins, or is he early? He arrives precisely when he means to, and usually listening to the Tech Fan podcast with Tim Robertson and David Cohen, part of the Stoplight Network.
This has been the Essential Apple Podcast. Goodbye and thank you for listening.